here we are. This is S.x Love Psychedelics, and I'm your host, Dr. Kat. Bringing you psychosexual conversations that will leave you intellectually turned on and hungry for more.
One thing you and I kind of chatted about that feels meaningful to this is to hold those opposites, to go through this in disintegration, we have to know how to grieve.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about grief a little bit.
Okay, let's go there.
Right? Because there is a and there's varying degrees, but grief is about having a level of acceptance of a loss, but also realizing that just because I lost a person, a job, a way of seeing myself, a way of understanding life, doesn't mean that the knowledge I took from it, the love that was there, the relationship is gone too. I think that's for me the big difference between mourning something and grieving something. When you mourn something, there is still a negotiation with the loss. You're saying, no, I'm not willing to accept that this is gone. And there is an attached idea that if it's gone, it's gone. The love is gone, the relationship is gone, the experience is gone. There is a total like annihilation of the whole thing, as opposed to, no, she was a beautiful partner for me for 10 years, and I have a library of knowledge and life experiences and love for this person, and we're not going to be together. And that hurts, and it's painful, and it's shattering, and you can be depressed about it, and you can be sad about it, but there is a deep level of acceptance, and the acceptance allows for Eros to come in. Because when I'm not accepting, I'm fighting Eros off. I'm like, no, I don't want to feel what it means to like fully lose this person.
And that's draining to stay in that state.
Say more.
It takes a lot of energy to fight, these parts of us, to manage the parts inside of us, whether we're protecting ourselves from the pain of the thing or the reality of what is, versus finding the grieving and crying and heaving and being in that space, which actually allows it to, like a wave, come up and then recede again.
That's
Move us.
such a good point. Yeah, it takes so much energy, and there's this idea that there's two types of suffering. There is neurotic suffering and authentic suffering, right? And the idea that neurotic suffering keeps you in the same place. Authentic suffering allows for change to happen. So I'm thinking about what you just said, how much energy it takes, right? How many of us at this moment are in a way refusing to accept some version of suffering that we have, but investing so much energy in not accepting it? Like, no, I refuse to believe that it's this way. And to bring, I think, like, I love that you're saying it, to bring empathy to it. It's like, yeah, because we're protecting ourselves from a deeper level of feeling. What because if I accept it, I have to weep in bed for a week.
Yeah.
But how do I remember that that's Eros too, that is actually life running through me? Right? That those tears are what alchemically we call solutio. Those are the tears that bring movement, that move things. They liquefy the stagnant. They allow for things to move from solid to liquid to something else. As opposed to, I'm just destroyed and devastated and this is depression. And obviously that was a wrong idea or the wrong choice, or right, starting to make all kind of future predictions based on my feeling of this moment.
You know how many clients that I work with around sexuality have a lot of grief, unprocessed grief in their bodies, that their bodies are tense and holding. And it's once they go into the falling apart that they start being able to access pleasure and access orgasmic states, because they're not tensing as much to contain that. I think
That's fascinating. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like what you said, we don't have a relationship with grief in this culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we got to keep going. We got to, get back on it. We don't have the time to do that, but we forget, all the things in our life that we need to grieve.
Yeah.
It's not just the relationship that was 10 years long. It's also the grief that happens after breakthroughs. The
Mm-hmm.
loss of the ways
Yeah.
that we operated before. I used to work out like a fiend. Can't do that anymore. And part of it's because I've healed my nervous system and
Yeah.
my body doesn't want that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It can't do that.
Absolutely. There's two things I want to pick up there because they're so um the grief that comes from positive change, right? From transformation. That's such an important piece. Because it's true. We lose something no matter which direction, right? Even if I'm changing my life for the best, it means I might stop hanging out with this person or letting go of that habit that I had. And can I allow myself to grieve because some other version of myself really needed it? So can I honor that version that needed that distraction, that needed that soothing, that needed that dissociation as I'm transforming into the next evolution of myself? And there's something really beautiful about that. It feels very integrated for me.
Mm.
I was just in a conversation last week with someone about, she was talking about how she is just fed up with her maiden self. Like, that's it. I loved her, but I'm done with her. Like, she carries my pain. I just want to be done with. And I was like, wait. That feels important. If you're throwing her out because you think that you're gonna feel less pain, you're throwing all of her out. And we're not acknowledging why she had to do, because she's carrying your pain. That's why she had to have all these behaviors, not because she's bad. Right? So we don't want to shame ourselves on the way to healthy transformation. It's like, oh, whatever, that part of me was just bad. It's like, no. That part of you has a whole history and a lot of reasons why it did what it did. Can we honor it in our grief? And my question, I'm curious if you can, because I am curious about this tie between grief and sexuality.
Yeah.
Right. Automatically I can say, like, yes, of course, if the body is constrained, if the soul is constrained from unprocessed laws, how will the Eros come in? Like, how will we celebrate first, second chakra centers? But can you say more about that? I'm really curious.
Yeah. So I'll speak in a few different ways. So one, I hear this a lot with clients, as well as I was working with somebody who was writing a piece about the ties of grief and sex, and how for many people, there's the pattern of a surge of erotic energy when they're grieving, because and there can be many reasons. It could be aliveness, that feeling, I'm feeling something, I'm feeling emotion. It also breaks us open and we're softer, we're more vulnerable. And that can be really magnetic. I remember after the time of my dad passing, for a few months after, not immediately after, but for the few months after, I was a lot more magnetic to partners, to sexual partners. And there was the part of me that felt, I felt so soft and vulnerable, and I could melt into people more easily. And it also, getting to sit with, is this, how is this acting as an archetype for me of safety, or of, giving me reprieve? Or is this, it could also be this creative force that comes from, when you soften into flow and soften into that, it's super attractive, but then it can also go the other route of grief can also kill our libido. And it can, because it can take all of us in order to do that process. And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong. It's just bringing conscious awareness. Like you said, I loved that, building a relationship with what we're observing in ourselves and what's happening.
Well, that was fun. Thanks for tuning in, lovers. And if you want to experience more ecstasy and sexual liberation, head over to s.xlovepsychedelics.com and learn about how you can join me for any one of my online or live events. And while you're there, grab my free guide on sex and psychedelics. Remember, this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please contact your healthcare provider and local law before pursuing any of the products or psychedelics discussed. And one final note here. I make this show specifically for you. If you're loving the show, then be sure to leave me a review in iTunes or Spotify to let me know. Happy to be here and happy to serve. I'll see you next time on S.x Love Psychedelics.